Okay, so let's start off with what actually is rewilding. So a lot of native animals in Britain have gone extinct. So you might not realise that bears actually used to be a wild animal in Britain. Wolves, lynxes, beavers have been reintroduced. The challenge then is choose what candidate they want to put forward for rewilding and persuade the public.
We wanted to get scientists in or visitors in after the pandemic. We wanted to get trips going, but also we found that everything was a little sterile after the pandemic. We wanted to re-engage our parents, and something that I felt that we hadn't looked into too much was science capital, and so I wanted to try and do this project to raise their capital. Actually, did I discover this term? So if you don't know science capital, I'll briefly explain it. It's just the word that we give to a student's attitude to science, their knowledge to science, their understanding and relevance to it in their society, in their lives. And I just thought we really do need to promote that. So the initial activity, we brought in a scientist via webinar into the class, which gave it real kudos. The children loved that.
So it's a real life thing that happened in America, in Yellowstone National Park. They had no wolves at all. People hunted them. They had a big problem because the number of elk and deer increased because they had no predators and they ate all the plants. And so the biodiversity of the area went right down because there were no wolves. So here's the food web before the wolves were introduced, and then what the students do is they put the wolves in and then they predict what's going to happen.
And their homework was to go and talk with their family about each and every one of these animals and decide on the brief evidence that we gave them. And at the end, they had to discuss with their parents and they had to vote. Well, what should we go for? So we then said, well, how do we decide? And we then looked at claims. So what evidence is there to actually show that that is the case? And we modelled how to action that through a real-life sort of more relevant idea to them, which is the band, the TBS Act. Now, I don't know about you, but I didn't know who TBS were. They are play on a very famous pop band. I think they're from South Korea. Anyway, the children, they thought it was great. But the claim was that they were the most successful music act of last year. So how do we know if this is a true claim or not? So they were presented with some pieces of evidence, and they firstly had to decide, well, is this evidence actually relevant to that claim, or is it just irrelevant? And that was our first discussion. We came back with one of those pieces was irrelevant, 3 were relevant. But then we had to say, well, now we know if this evidence is relevant, does it actually support or oppose the claim? So again, we were talking about that in their group work, and we discovered there was enough evidence to suggest that the claim was supported. Now let's reapply it to their animal. They had to come up with 3 claims. Firstly, that their animal can survive. Secondly, people want that animal back in the wild. And another one is it has a positive effect on the food web. They were then presented with additional information. For example, this is the wolf evidence sheet. So they would have their claims and they would look through this. They were provided with some video links and other resources as well. They could do their own research. And they then decided how strong their claims were. Again, applying that skill that we helped them to understand through the real-life example. So it's a really engaging, fun activity. The children really enjoyed it. They did have a complaint, though, which I was really surprised about. They genuinely thought that their decision was going to happen. And when they realised that this wasn't happening, they were quite upset, some of them. They said, so do you mean that we're not having the lynx rewilded then? We've just done all of this work and it's for nothing. Some of them had that attitude. So I was quite surprised. Well, no, it's just an example of how you can work if you choose to do this in your later life. This is what people do when they leave school. You may choose to do this. So it's really rewarding. They had great fun and so did I. Thank you very much.
Why are you here today? So many of you highlighted the challenge of teaching, creating learning opportunities for disengaged students, low achievers, low attainers. So here I can see that there will be many speakers, keynotes, talking about new opportunities, methodologies, resources, real-life context, also evidence-based practices, which will offer you some insights. And this is what we would like to have today, is opportunities for meaningful learning. That is, engaged students, independent learners, critical thinkers, competent problem solvers, and in particular, apprentices with that joy in their eyes. So open schooling is a key approach promoted by the European Union, which means partnerships between schools, universities, and society to bring real-life problems to the classroom. Sustainability is a key point because we would like to see youth, yes, capable to bring science to their lives and to build a desirable future. So with Connect, we have this butterfly. It's about helping students be engaged when you activate their interest, so you know their needs. And the second, you help them acquire knowledge, develop understanding. And the third, it's about apply that knowledge in different situations, different contexts. So then they will be able to analyze their science actions to solve real-life problems.